Good afternoon, welcome to the Market Wrap number 117. Simply the view from APW Towers, what we think, what we view, what our views are, that we want to share with the market. Hopefully they feel it's newsworthy and help them make buying or not making buying decisions. It's completely up to how you feel about it. Either way, do like it, don't like it, comment if you wish, people do, and share, those sort of things. Firstly, for this week I'd like to thank all those people who came along to the Tower Club in Singapore for our property and networking evenings this week. Over 100 attendees, which is lovely. It was an excellent evening of meeting like-minded people and experts, i.e. mortgage people, property people, tax planning people. No selling, just sharing. We're doing another one in November, so please make it along if you can. Now this week we're going to talk about the rental housing catastrophe that's on the way, and how can we deal with it? Can we capitalise on it potentially? You know, the UK's unrelenting war on private landlords is going to backfire spectacularly. If you look at the global background, in other countries such as Ireland, foreign exchange students are being forced to live in tents because there's a shortage of homes to rent. In Sweden, the market has just about collapsed, the rental market. And in Berlin, they've just been forced by a constitutional court to end a catastrophic experiment in price controls. So right across Europe, there are horror stories emerging of housing disasters as governments try to intervene with controls, restrictions and price caps on anyone who is foolish enough to try and make money in the buy-to-let marketplace. Now, you know, we think this is only happening on the other side of the channel or the RSC, but in reality we are stumbling or sleepwalking into a similar sort of thing here in the UK, a rental catastrophe. That's our view here at APW Towers. The UK government has spent the last 5 years persecuting landlords, and it is. And the predictable result is that many of them are pulling out of the market, sending, you know, rental prices soaring and creating intense shortages of supply. You know, there are 50% less landlords across the UK than there were before COVID. Now, in a country that's made up of as many renters as homeowners, that matters more than ever. In truth, the UK urgently needs to build more homes, both to buy and to rent, you know, the PRS sector and the residential sector, but the persecution of landlords is going to make that not happen. So let's look in detail at actually what did happen in Europe and see if it's been mirrored in the UK. In Ireland, there are only 851 properties available to rent in the whole of the country in May. There are reports of long queues forming outside the occasional place it does come onto the market, very reminiscent of what has been happening in London. 22 people per property in London apparently. In Sweden, people now have to wait a decade or more to find somewhere to live, double the average waiting time of 10 years ago. So a decade to get into a rental property. In Berlin, a much hyped experiment in rent controls has been brought to an end by the courts after prices soared out of control. The explanation: is it greedy landlords? Is it exploitative mortgage companies? Is it people trying to make money out of the poor? No, it's government intervention, and it turns out it's the same story right across the continent. What we've basically seen is governments and local councils trying to control the market. And there is the problem. The UK is heading in the same direction, and with it potentially the same results. Over the last 5 years, the government has waged an unrelenting war on private landlords. If you look back at what has happened and what they have done in the UK. Firstly, they've imposed a series of taxes which make it more and more taxable to own a rental property. They've got rid of the basically where you could offset your mortgage interest can be set against rent, so the final death knell for Maurus. Only if the property is owned by a limited company can it still be offset. And with mortgage rates rising faster and faster, that sort of tax advantage that's disappeared is going to be a major issue. We also have a higher rate of capital gains tax being charged, as lettings relief has been changed as of 2020. And finally, the government has steadily increased the rights of tenants, making evictions harder. I was chatting to someone this week at our networking evening, and they said they're only doing 6 monthly lets because then you can get someone out after 6 months. Okay? Because if you've got a 12-month let, you can't get them out. And that's negative for the market, negative for our business. They've got endless series of extra responsibilities for landlords, which start with making sure environmental standards are met. These environmental standards that the government is not even clear about. So how can you meet them if you don't know what they are? And then finally, landlords are acting as informal immigration police by forcing them to check on the resident state of their tenants. You can go to jail if you have an illegal immigrant staying in your house. Now, of course, everyone knows that landlords should keep their properties in good condition. They should treat their tenants fairly. I'm not suggesting they shouldn't. And these changes in many cases are very good. But many of the extra rules and regulations simply add to costs while creating no discernible benefits for anyone except a small army of officials and pen pushers tasked with enforcing them. Now, we haven't quite got to the stage of rent controls yet, full-scale rent controls, although people like the populist London Mayor Sadiq Khan has been calling for them, but it may not be far away. Okay, the state has been using every power available to it to make renting out a property as difficult as possible and to chip away at whatever slim profits might be made by doing so. So to recap, it's pretty grim. They've been trying to make it a better place for tenants. They've been trying to make a lot more money for themselves. The capital gains tax move earned billions for the government. But the results have been predictable. There's increasing evidence that private landlords are selling up and quitting the market. According to the estate agents Chesterton's, the number of properties available to rent in London fell by 38% last year. They describe that as staggering. Whilst the number of tenants inquiries has gone up by 60%. So you've got 40% less landlords and 60% more inquiries. With that kind of imbalance between supply and demand, it's hardly surprising that overall rents are up by 20% last year in the capital alone, and they're talking about many regions in the UK going up by another 20% over the next 5 years. In the capital, talking about rents going up by 3% a month. Nationally, they're going up by 10% annually overall. It's the fastest rates for a quarter of a century. I mean, these really are shocking figures, and I'm not making these up, although they do say 90% of the statistics are made up on the spot. Meanwhile, students are heading off to university this autumn. They may well find they've got nowhere to live. If you look at Manchester, for example, Savills reported a 10% drop in supply over the last year, as well as soaring prices. Region by region, it's the same story. There's nothing on the market, and what there is has become very expensive. And it will hurt much more than it did in the past, because whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not commenting on that. The UK is now a nation of renters as well as property owners. Overall, 19% of us in the UK are dependent on the private rented sector for somewhere to live, compared to 65% who own their own homes and 17% in public sector housing. This is particularly relevant, when the UK has a net immigration of more than half a million people a year. In 2021, 1.1 million visas were issued. 60,000 illegal immigrants on top of that. There are more than 2 million people at university, more than 600,000 of them coming from abroad. There are loads of short-term workers, even though Brexit has sent many home, they've been replaced. And that's not going to change anytime soon, and it shouldn't, because it's good for the economy. But we need a vibrant, high-quality private rental industry, just in the same way as we need factories, power plants, broadband connections, supermarkets, pubs, all those other things that keep daily life ticking along over, football matches, Leeds United. The UK definitely needs more affordable homes to buy as well as to rent, but the only way to make that happen is to start building more, especially on the outskirts of city centres, where people actually want to live. So there are plenty of properties available either to buy or rent, depending on individual circumstances. You need to get rid of this NIMBYism, not in my backyard. The European Neighbours of the UK offer grim examples of what happens when a government tries to fix prices and control the market. The last thing the UK should be doing now is going down the same road. So where does this leave us as buy-to-let to be landlords or possible landlords? From APW Towers, okay, we see it as an opportunity. Yes, mortgage rates will increase for the next 2 years. The economy could be in trouble. We don't know how deep that is. Mortgages will be harder to get because banks are tightening lending criteria, and I've seen that over the last 2 weeks. And yes, rent controls may be out there, although I think probably quite unlikely. Against that backdrop, we've got a fall of 50% of buy-to-let properties available, 38% in London, 50% around the country. Surely this is a buying opportunity, especially if you can buy via a company using your offshore status that gives many tax benefits. Last week, I was accused on this, in our comments, of being too positive, of being a salesperson. This is not selling. It's making a reasoned argument for purchasing buy-to-let property now. Thanks very much for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. Do comment, whatever you'd like, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Credit to Matthew Lynn from The Telegraph. I dug up a lot of the information today from his research. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.